there's one thing that I haven't talked about yet, which is your range. So your range is crucial to understanding how your image is. I've got a very tight range into the gun. I raise pocket pairs and big cards and some Sudi connectors, which means I'm probably raising 10 to maybe 15% of my hands, maybe up to 20% of my hands short-handed. But what that means is when I raise under the gun, they can't see my hands, so they have to put me on something like 2 big cards or a big pocket pair, because small pocket pairs are a very small part of my range. So what that means is, had I hit my 3 here, I would have been completely disguised. They would never put me on a set. They might put me on ace queen or king queen, which for a lot of hands on that particular flop would be scary, but I definitely would not have something like queen 5 or 5-2, so if they did turn top 2 pair with like a queen jack, they would definitely think they had the nuts. So range is something that is actively changing and has to be maintained. And you maintain your range by doing something called merging or balancing it. And I'll talk about both of these in detail. So when you merge ranges, the best description I've ever heard of this is somebody says, sometimes I lock my bedroom door when I'm not masturbating. And the idea is that if you only lock your bedroom door when you're masturbating, everybody who comes to your bedroom knows when you're masturbating. So sometimes I lock my bedroom door when I'm not masturbating. This is called merging your ranges. See, now there's a 80% chance that you've got a good hand, 20% chance you don't have a good hand. So there's no way to definitely put you on a hand. The other thing is balancing ranges. And let me look at this hand a little bit closer. So we want to get his entire stack in. Well, now we don't. Now we've got a split pot. So he raised before the flop. He could very well have the ace, but his bet's not such an overbet that I think we have to call here. And he does have the ace there, so not the best hand for us. Might should have done something different on the turn. So balancing your ranges is kind of the opposite of merging your ranges. You merge your range when you call instead of raising, or when you bet instead of checking. Balancing your ranges is, it gets kind of complicated to explain, but it's when you actively seek to change your range. So if I was to raise 6-7 suited under the gun, that's a balancing range. That's not a merging range. The reason is I'm actively raising 6-7, and I'm trying to do that so that when I raise pocket aces, they don't know I've got pocket aces. Merging your range, on the other hand, is generally done after the flop, and it's a passive response. So I've got top pair and I check it. And the reason I do that is because I also check no hand, so that time, the time that I do check with no hand, maybe they give me a free card, or the time that I check with top pair, maybe they think I've got no hand. So that's merging, and balancing is active. So that's the difference, and it's kind of it's not a difference that really matters in poker. The idea that does matter is simply make sure your ranges aren't crystal clear, because if an opponent can read your ranges, then you've basically gotten played. So I do a lot of range merging. Actually, I make it a fundamental part of my game, and I'm going to show you throughout this video how I merge ranges. If I do get a hand where I can show you that. So raising 6-9 here would not be an example of merging or balancing a range. The reason being that, you know, I already raise lots of weak hands on the button. I raise stuff like Sudi connectors. I raise your ace-3 suited. So 6-9 doesn't actually make my image any better or worse, because they know I'm raising weak hands. So, and in this case, I'm actually raising a weak hand. So it basically pigeonholes me to exactly what they expect from me. So it's a bad play. Looks like this is turning into a full ring game, so maybe this will go on the full ring curriculum, which would be great because we need a discussion of merging ranges there too. So Solkar I have played against before. He's a reasonably tight, reasonably good player, and I have not played against Pavlakakos. So one of the best, I heard a poker player talk once about how he merges ranges when he's playing shorthanded, like four-handed. And he had an interesting take on it. It's not one that I personally subscribe to, and I haven't done the math to see if it's a better strategy, but it might work within his entire gestalt of poker playing style. And what his balancing strategy is that anytime he flops top pair, he checks it. Now, there are a lot of reasons why this might be good. If you're playing in a very aggressive game, it often means you can get a bet out of players who normally would have check folded. So the reason a c-bet works so well is because players often check fold them. So if you bet out with your top pair, they're often going to fold. Now, if you check behind with your top pair, you can often get a bet on the turn as they bet into you. So that's one reason to do it. The other reason is that so when you check behind on the flop, they don't fire out on the turn 100% of the time. So all of these things kind of come together to make checking behind top pair a valid balancing strategy. Again, it's not something I would recommend, especially for new players, and if you do decide to balance your ranges, make sure you understand why you're doing it. But you know, it works for him and it works in the games he plays, so more power to him. So Blue Janus with the raise here. It's a pretty big raise. It indicates he's got a very strong hand. Depending on how many callers we get, this could have been a call. At this point, it's not going to be. We'd need probably 6 players involved to make this a reasonable call. Now, we've got 5 players in, and we've got some extra money over here. So I am going to call this for the straight and flush value, as well as the 2-pair value. So we hit the 4, which is not great, because there's most likely somebody out there with a 2 or with an overpair to our 4. But the pot is extremely large relative to our stack. It's we've got about 2 times the pot, and generally with a hand that is top pair with a great kicker and a pot that is this big, you can sometimes get away with getting it all in. If Blue Janus had bet there and had gone fold and fold, I probably would have raised. So here we've actually turned a better hand. We've got the nut flush draw as well as the gut shot straight draw, as well as the draws to 2-pair. I think we can probably get away with a small bet here, so I'm gonna say about 500, about a third of the pot. That way, when we do get calls, we're actually getting pot odds. We're giving ourselves pot odds for the flush draws, but we also have some other reasonably good hand in there. And this is where he does go all in. That's a very strange place to go all in. To not bet the flop, I would think he would always bet the flop with a big pair there. But we are getting pot committed on all of our draws, so we are going to call this. So right now we're getting 1 to 4. Our flush draw itself is 1 to 5. If we think that our 3s are sometimes outs, or our aces are sometimes out, and our 4s are definitely always outs, then that's going to be a call. And in this case, our aces were not outs, and we did lose it to pocket 6s, but we did make a great call there because the aces were outs, as were the 4s. So I actually want to go back at this point and look at that hand where we got stacked a few minutes ago. Here it is here. So what happened was we had ace-4 and we called, and Blue Janus raised to 280, and it was called 1, 2, 3, 4 times, so we were in 5-to-1 on our money. That's a fine call. Our ace-4 against 5 hands has pretty good equity. We only have to have 20% equity, and plus all the implied odds that we have. So that's a reasonable call. On the flop we check, intending to probably check call. We don't have much except for the 4 there, but really we would have waited to see what everybody did after the c-bet. If it had been called in a couple of places, we would have folded there. So when we bet out on the turn, that's a reasonable bet. We are essentially trying to set ourselves pot odds to catch our flush, and then the worst thing in the world happens, which is we get, actually I'm gonna play this in. We get check raised, or sorry, we get raised off of our raise, and it's another 1600 chips to call. And it goes fold, call, and then it's up to us. So let's look at our outs. We have let's turn the hands face up. We've got 2 6s and we've got ace king. So our actual outs were the aces were outs, so we had 2 of those left. Then the 4s were outs, and we had 2 of those left. That gives us 4 outs. Then we had the flush draw, which gives us another 9 outs, because actually, well, 8 outs, because he had a spade there, but we couldn't have known that. So we're going to call 9 outs plus 4 outs. That gives us 13 outs. So we're 26% to win that hand, and we're getting 4-1 on our money. So an absolutely, completely break-even call, given the other hands that were involved. We were putting in 1/4 of the pot, roughly, and we were 26% to win, so it was a slight edge there. This is going to be a fold. Unfortunately, we don't know what he has, and it's been kind of a weirdly played hand, and his bet was too large to call there for pot odds, so we're just going to let go of that one. Now, let's look back at that hand again. If he had had 7s instead of 6s, then our 3s would have also been outs, and that was kind of what we were banking on for the plus EV call. If he had 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks, queens, kings, then we actually had 3 more outs. So instead of having 12 outs, we would have had 16 outs, which would have given us 32% chance to win, and we were putting in 25% of the pot. So that would have been a 9% ROI on us on the call. So we were counting the 3s as outs. We know that we can't always count the 3s as outs, but worst case scenario was what we just saw there, that one of our aces was blocked and our 3s were no good. And in that case, we are looking at essentially a break-even call. Had he had something besides 6s, we would have been significantly plus EV. So just looking at the math there, one more time, we know that we did make the right decision in the heat of the moment to call. So here Blue Janus raises to 160. We have pocket 3s. We're asked to call 120. If we have 20 times the call size, which we do, we are going to call. That's basic set value principle. And we do flop the 3, so we are going to check raise here on the flop. And it's going to be a big check raise. I'm going to make it 700 because the board is so dry. And he's going to go all in, and we are going to call. We're happy with our pocket 3s. We do get it in with essentially the nuts. And we take a stack away. I'm not sure what he thought we were check raising there. Maybe he thought we had a weak repair with a flush draw and he wanted to get it in against us. But ace-6 there is going to be a bad call. It's okay to c-bet there. It's not okay to call a raise or put it all in. If he had a strong flush draw to go with that ace, he'd have a very strong hand. But the simple fact is, if I just had the 2 of hearts, I was still 33% to beat him there, and I think I would be pot committed to call his raise, given that our hands were face up. If I did just have the 2, that would have played out a lot differently. But you know, that was it was a pretty big mistake on Blue Janus's part. So we've done some good. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've done some good work. We covered merging and balancing ranges, and we covered a really in-depth pot odds calculation. So with that, I'm going to shut the video off, and thank you for joining us at UPoker Academy. Please check us out on riskoriented.com for more poker strategy delivered directly to your YouTube account. Please like us and subscribe to us. And for more poker strategy right now, continue on to our next poker lecture by clicking here.